What purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Swalwell of California. Page 37, line 7, after the dollar amount, insert reduced by $97,500,000, increased by $97,500,000.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we learned anything about the Boston Marathon bombings, it's that real threats still exist against our homeland from outside actors motivated by outside forces with great access now from readily accessible materials that they can get on the internet and can become radicalized also on the internet and can target us here at home with IED devices. I rise in support of my amendment, Mr. Chairman, which would require that at least $97.5 million of the $1.5 billion provided to the Federal Emergency Management Agency for state and local government homeland security grants would be used for mass transit security programs. These programs are listed on 1E on page 38 of the bill, and the main FEMA and Department of Homeland Security mass transit security effort is their Transit Security Grant Program. I want to start by thanking Homeland Security Appropriations Subcommittee Chairman Carter and Ranking Member Price for the increase in funding for the account that funds local grant programs for security and terrorism readiness. I organized a letter signed by 39 other members of Congress asking for funding that is sufficiently robust for TSGP, the Transit Safety Grant Program, to be able to meet our needs for mass transit security. Chairman Carter and Ranking Member Price listened to our request, and more money will be available for this critical security program. Now, while the FEMA state and local grant account funds a variety of homeland security initiatives, my amendment addresses the critical, if often overlooked, element of mass transit security. Mass transit, which mostly includes bus and rail, is used by millions of Americans every year. In fact, according to the American Public Transportation Association, there were over 10.5 billion passenger trips in 2012 alone. That amounts to over 28 million trips per day. We're fortunate in the East Bay of California, which I am privileged to represent, to have an excellent bus system and the world-famous Bay Area Rapid Transit System, also known as BART. There were over 400,000 BART passenger trips just this past April. Unfortunately, some of what makes mass transit so great, that it can be easily accessible and carry so many people at such quick time through critical urban centers, makes it vulnerable to terrorist attacks. In June 2009, the Government Accountability Office, GAO, summarized the issues facing mass transit, writing the following. According to the Transportation Security Administration, transit officials and transit experts, certain characteristics of our mass transit systems, such as multiple access points and limited barriers to access, make them inherently vulnerable to terrorist attack and therefore difficult to secure. High ridership, expensive infrastructure, economic importance, and location in large metropolitan areas or tourist destinations also make them attractive targets for terrorists because of the potential for mass casualties and economic damage. Just 2 months ago in April, a plot to target trains in Canada was thankfully disrupted before anybody was hurt. And of course, everyone remembers the horrible London attacks from 2005 and the Madrid transit attacks in 2004. No American in any part of our country on any of our mass transit systems should live in fear of a mass transit attack. And damaging mass transit in our key urban centers wouldn't only harm that particular area, but it could ripple through our nation's economy. Transit security, Mr. Chairman, means economic security. Everyone has an interest in protecting our public transit systems, and that's where TSGP comes in. Through TSGP, local mass transit systems receive grants to protect and minimize damage from terrorist events. Example uses include surveillance training, public awareness campaigns, detection equipment, security cameras, and the hardening of infrastructure. The continuing resolution for fiscal year 2013 provides a floor of $97.5 million for mass transit security, before sequestration of which $10 million was reserved for Amtrak. My amendment would use that same number, and since that bill before us is based on sequestration levels already, that would amount to an increase in the floor for fiscal year 2014 over fiscal year 2013. To provide such broad discretion for the Department of Homeland Security is important. However, I also understand the argument that the Homeland Security Secretary should be able to distribute money based on risk and potential harm. I know some members may feel we shouldn't set minimum amounts to be spent out of this account. And to provide such discretion is important, but it ignores our constitutional responsibility to provide clear direction on how the money is spent, and it risks certain priorities being ignored. Moreover, the Transportation Security Grant Program is a competitive grant program, and so within that framework, money still would only be distributed based on risk and damage potential. Last Congress, minimums were included for this account when a compromise was developed with the Senate, including for transit security. I'd hope the same thing would happen again. My amendment gives this House an opportunity to state now on the record that we value mass transit security. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman's time has expired.